Good morning.
Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to the Lincolnshire Police and Crime Panel. Morning, Commissioner. Welcome. Julie, Joanne, warm welcome again. Before we start the official business today, there's a couple of things I'd like to say. A warm welcome to Dr. Patricia Haggerty, our new independent co-opted member. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Haggerty. Thank you. The other thing I'd like to say is I understand, Mr. West, you're leaving us at the end of July. Am I right in thinking that? I thought it was your retirement date. So I'd just like, on behalf of the panel, to thank you in your role as Head of Democratic Services in supporting this panel over the time that the County Council has been the host. So thank you very much, Mr. West.
Thank you for those kind words, Chairman. I appreciate that.
And we wish you all the best in your retirement. Following on from that, Nicola Calver has been successful and is going to take over from Mr. West. So congratulations, Nicola, on your new appointment, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Okay, we'll now get into the agenda of the meeting, and item 1, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Marsh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, outgoing Chairman. The number 1 on the agenda is election of a chairman. We have 1 nomination who I'd like to nominate, which is Chris Cook again as independent member. Do I have a seconder? Seconders are all over the place. Are there any other nominations? No. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much for your support for Chris. And Chris, can I just say, as your deputy have been, it's been a pleasure working with you. You've guided this committee through some torrid waters, and we look forward to working with you for another year. And I'll now hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marsh, and thank you to the members for your support. Thank you very much. I will now then take over from Councillor Marsh to look at item 2 on the agenda, which is the election of Vice Chairman. Could I have a nomination, please?
May I nominate Councillor Graham Marsh?
Councillor Dilks is nominating Councillor Marsh as seconder, please. Councillor Woodliff, all in favour? Unanimous. So congratulations, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you all for your support.
And thank you over the last year for supporting me in the way you have done as Vice Chairman of this panel. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move to item 3 on the agenda. Apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Sean Matthews, Councillor Ken Banford, Councillor Emma Bailey and Councillor Jonathan Pessell.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest this morning, please? No, I don't see any. Minutes of the last meeting held on the 6th of February. Can I have a proposer for the accuracy? Councillor Beale, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Marsh. All in favour? Thank you. And actions from that meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to update the panel. The office has liaised with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, who provided a quote from the company who conducts the independent survey, and unfortunately the cost of the briefing was not considered feasible within the panel's budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your consultants, Commissioner, are quite expensive, so we decided not to utilise that. Okay, thank you very much for that. Item 7 on the agenda, communications from the Chairman. Well, I would like to say something, and for the first time in what I think is many years, there are some really highlighted green shoots for Lincolnshire Police. Lincolnshire Police has suffered from a lack of proper funding for many, many, many years, and that has impacted on the resource availability across the county. So for the first time, through the work of the Commissioner, the Chief Constable, local politicians and this panel, they've been able to secure a level of funding that will give them some improvements. Probably not what they actually wanted, but it's going to move them forward in a very positive way, resulting in what we hope a better service for the public of Lincolnshire. So congratulations to you, Commissioner, and your Chief Constable, and congratulations to all of those who were supportive of you in your quest for further funding. So I'll move to questions from the public. Are there any questions from the public?
No, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So we'll move to item 9, Commissioner, your annual report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Before I go into that, I would just like to add a comment on to your previous comment about the funding situation. There has been consistent and very welcome support from this panel as part of the quest to get more funding, for which I'm very grateful. So thank you to everybody on the panel for that support. You're right in saying it isn't a silver bullet. It doesn't give us everything that we wanted and needed. And in fairness, we're still at the stage where we are the second lowest funded force in the country by head of population, second only to Bedfordshire, who have got some particular challenges around Luton, for which they get some separate funding. But we are still in that position, but it does mean that instead of planning, as we were only a few months ago, to reduce the already lowest amount of police officers per head of population in the country by a further 200, and an additional 200 police staff would have also gone, we're now in the position of not doing that, and on top of not doing that, actually recruiting. So it's a significant difference. The challenge I think we face at a national level, with working with people like the College of Policing, the Inspectorate, the Home Office and others, whilst being very respectful of the fact that they are supporting us, as well as appropriate challenge, which is the role, is there is still, in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, a lack of understanding amongst them that we're working with about just how dire the situation was. So very much I'm still at the position of trying to explain to them that we can't turn that around and instantly deliver results, when we were literally at the point of dismantling the entire organisation. To turn that around in 3 to 6 months is just unrealistic. So I do fear that while the Inspectorate listened to my pleas to move back the next appeal inspection, so instead of happening now, it's happening in a few months' time, it will still come too soon to see all of the improvements that we know are being worked on and will come. And whilst inspections are really important and they're vital for me in working with the Chief to see the improvement, there's a certain irony that if you keep taking the plant out of the pot to see if the roots have grown, you sort of stop the roots growing. And we're very focused on delivering what we need to with the money, at the same time as being focused on delivering against the inspection that's to come. And it would be an awful lot easier if we weren't fighting on every front. So we will do everything we can to be ready for that inspection. The Chief and his team are working incredibly hard to deliver a new strategic plan with operational plans in every different area of the organisation beneath it, at the same time as getting ready for that. So I think it will still be a very tough year. My expectation is that there will still be challenges in the next inspection report, but the foundations will definitely be there for the one after that. So I feel confident that everything's moving in the right direction, but I do not underestimate the size and scale of the challenge. It's literally decades of underinvestment in some areas, such as the digital and data area, means that apart from recruiting people to that core function, you are then going, well, actually, the building they're in isn't fit for purpose. So we've got to build a building, find a building. You've then got to invest in the kit. You've then got to invest in the systems. And without that, all the other departments in policing won't benefit from the investments into digital and data. So that's just one example that's the funding gives us a 3-year ability to plan properly and then deliver strategically, but it won't happen quickly. And that's the pressure we're coming under nationally is, well, we've given you the money, where's the results? which I get because that's politics, but at the same time, there's a harsh reality, as we all know, that you can't do everything all of the time at once. So I just thought I'd give that outline of where we were, but it's an exciting time that's a lot better than anything we've ever faced. Having the challenge of how are we going to spend this money properly and quickly is a much better challenge to what services are we going to reduce or get rid of altogether, which is where we were.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. So going back to the item around your annual report.
Yeah, I know members are fully aware by now that obviously the clue's in the name. It's an annual report. It's I'm trying to think, is that my 10th? So it is a sort of pattern that we're in, that every year we do this. I'm happy to take any questions on the annual report. But as ever, it's always nice when we're compiling this to actually look back and go, wow, for a very small team of people, there's an awful lot of things been achieved. And it instantly gets the brain going on what are we going to do next. So I think it is an important period of time to actually put your foot on the ball and look at where you are. You know, I would just pay tribute to all the members of the OPCC who, again, are also going through in uncertain times with the transition from the PCC model into what comes next. And obviously we, as yet, haven't got legislation to give anybody clarity about what that looks like. So, as I say, I would pay tribute to all of them that are working exceptionally hard with that uncertainty hanging over them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a few questions for you on your annual report. The first question from Dr. Haggerty. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report. Having not been in the meetings for the past year, it's really useful for me to understand what's been taking place. In the report introduction, you state that we've got the additional 16 million, which of course is very welcome, but also, and as you've just articulated, isn't sufficient to meet the challenges that's being faced. So I'd like to ask what it is you feel isn't going to be addressed as a result of that shortfall, and what is it the panel could do to support you in that?
I think that's a really, really helpful question. And I mean, fundamentally, it won't give us enough police officers and PCSOs, frankly, when you compare it against other forces around the country, the size and scale of Lincolnshire, the particular challenges that Lincolnshire has, such as Skegness growing from 25,000 to 250,000 in the summertime with no additional funding for that. The road network of 5,500 miles of road, mainly BC unclassified, with one of the highest seriously injured and road deaths in the country. I think it doesn't matter how much money comes into a single partner, we rely on effective partnership working, and other partners in Lincolnshire suffer with the same funding formula as policing does. So local government struggles, health struggles, you know, the third sector struggles. So that's enabled us to have really close working relationships, but I believe they've never been under such strain. At the moment, I'm seeing various partners really questioning whether they want to spend money in partnership spaces, and that's making things tougher. And there's no easy choices for them, I understand that. But the panel have always been supportive. I think at the moment, what I'm waiting for from the Chief is the completion of the work which will give the new operating model. Once we've got that, we'll be able to obviously share the detail of what that looks like. The Chief and I have already committed. We will do a circuit of all the districts and the county in the autumn to present to councillors across the county what the new model will look like, what it will mean for each of their areas, to give that not just the explanation but also get the feedback so we can understand. So I think we're at a stage where I can't honestly give you a straight answer until the Chief's laid out his plans fully. We've then discussed them with all of the elected representatives, and then, you know, I think the debate for fairer funding will continue. The big questions remain. Will there be a Lincolnshire police force? We don't know. There are plans afoot for mergers. We don't know if that's to 8, 9, 15 forces. We don't know. We don't know if there'll be early adopters. Will it be a case of some mergers will be forced to prove concept? Will we be part of that? We don't know. So there are lots of things yet that we don't know, but once I get any clarity around it, I will obviously involve the panel, and if there's anything we can work on collaboratively, then we will absolutely be making that clear. So I'm afraid I can't give you a very precise, clear answer other than to say I think that it is a really important time, and I will make sure through these meetings, but also if the meeting cycle doesn't quite work, through the chair I'll make sure the information gets disseminated through to the panel.
Thank you.
Okay, and another one, thank you.
It sort of follows on from that, really. So again, in the introduction, you state that you're not going to shirk away from innovation, which is great to hear. And I wondered if there's any specific examples of what you're planning to work on or currently working on that you can share.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest barriers we've got to moving forward is the capability within what we call DDAT, so the digital data area. We've got an incredibly good new head of that area who has been in there now a few months. He's come up with a new strategy which has been signed off and approved. But as I said, there's some fundamentals we've got to get right. So, for example, I would love to work on a project to make sure all the local authorities' CCTV pipe directly into the control room. That would be a great thing to do. It's just physically not possible because of bandwidth and other problems to do at the moment. So some of those just fundamental things need to be done before that innovation can come. There are certain things that are already in the report around CCTV that we're innovating already, but a lot of it is things like what they're calling the EVR project, so where we're using video technology to actually engage with victims of crime at a very early stage to actually gather information and evidence rather than wait for appointments. This was initially developed in Dorset. The outcomes were exceptionally well received by the public, and we've piloted it on the east of the county, and there was 100% satisfaction with the people that used that service. Not many things you do get 100% satisfaction. So that is currently being rolled out across the county. Well, the thing is, to put 30 more people in that, you're taking them from something else, so the chief's dealing with that. But those kind of innovations are going, how do you deliver the service to the public at the time they want it, in ways that they want it, rather than just doing what you did yesterday. So there's lots of going on around that. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic processing, all of those things are being worked at different levels in different departments, but linked through to the national work that's being done on those projects. So what we're not doing is a standalone Lincolnshire thing. We're trying to make sure that what we're doing is tried and tested where possible. It links through to national programmes. Obviously, that gives us the opportunity to try and get national funding as well. But working with people like the College of Policing, who are going to be leading the AI Centre nationally, we're sort of using lots of that. But anything we can take the burden off staff and officers from a time point of view to free them up to do more things that only they can do is where we're concentrating a lot of our time and efforts.
Thank you.
Councillor Beale, you want to come in?
Thank you. I had a question which was possibly going to ask later, but it comes in appropriately now with regards to CCTV, and you talk about facial recognition being looked at. Could you expand upon that, specifically with regards to the current system's capability of using it? More importantly, what is stopping the use of facial recognition at the moment, whether that's by the police or other authorities, and what do our neighbouring forces do, bearing in mind, as you said, we're likely to be forced or willingly merged with them? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, on the last point first, I hope we're not. I would like to see a Lincolnshire Police moving forward. I think it's a big enough area that it warrants it. An East Midlands police force, in my opinion, wouldn't make the people of Spalding, Skegness, Boston, Horncastle any safer when most of the resources, in my opinion, would get sucked into urban centres across the region rather than coming here. But I think with the CCTV and facial recognition piece, there's a number of things. I mean, the report that we had commissioned gives us a lot more information, some of which I wouldn't necessarily want to put in an open forum because it's obviously sensitive. But through the Safer Streets funding, we managed to bid successfully for additional funding for the county, the district councils really, to have funding to put better quality and more CCTV in key locations. The capability of that, plus most of the cameras around the county, already has the capability to do facial recognition. And if I use Lincoln as an example, it isn't used for facial recognition, but what it is used for is identifying, for example, vulnerable missing people. So what you can tap into there is, I'm looking for a lady with grey hair, she's got a blue coat and red trousers on, and she, in the last 2 hours, it will then give you very quickly information on where somebody meeting that description appears in the CCTV. So that's very useful in helping get vulnerable people back quickly. So that capability is being used. What's not being used at the moment is the facial recognition element, which would be, for example, if you said, well, this prolific shoplifter has just run out of a shop, he disappeared, we're not quite sure where, you could potentially, you know, look specifically for that individual. And there's a couple of barriers. Firstly, each of the councils will have to have a policy on that and be willing to use it, because it's your CCTV, not the police's CCTV. So that's one barrier. The second barrier is that nationally, whilst the quality of facial recognition has now got to the point where it seems irrefutable that it is of a significant quality, that the chance of misidentifying people is very, very small. There are some challenges going on with a couple of forces over that point, and it would be remiss of us not to wait for the outcome of those legal cases before making a decision. So that's the final bit, really. I think the results will be that the courts will find that it's absolutely fine and acceptable and that it's okay. For example, one person was misidentified in London, but it was his identical twin brother that was actually wanted. So it's reasonable to suggest that that level of misidentification is an acceptable risk to bear. It wouldn't be an acceptable risk if it was saying, well, you're ethnically the same colour as the person we want, therefore it's you. That level of risk is intolerable. So we seem to have moved very far away from that level of risk and much closer to the other risk. But once we know the outcome of the legal cases, that's the point at which I think we could really move forward with it.
Thank you very much. Quite a brief one, this, from myself. Page 23 of your report, you describe how your deputy is carrying out work with the armed forces. I just wondered if you could expand on that and just tell us what type of work is going on there, please.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things, really. I mean, Sarah is our representative for the Armed Forces Covenant, so there's a number of work streams that flow from that, not least of which, at the moment, there are a number of engagements, mainly RAF engagements, because obviously Lincolnshire has a significant cohort of RAF personnel. So Sarah is attending those, which just builds those bridges with personnel at all levels, but certainly at the senior level when they hold those kind of engagements. So to actually build those relationships, and that's really important for a number of reasons. Firstly, when we want to get them to do work behind the gates, it's important that we know who to go to and that they know who they're speaking to and why it's important. So, for example, there was recently a conference held where they were looking at violence against women and girls, which, as far as I'm aware, is a first for the RAF to do in Lincolnshire, which Sarah was involved in and spoke at. There's equally work that's gone on around domestic abuse. We've now got the RAF using Lincolnshire Police to train their investigators to PIP2 standard, which is a really important thing for the quality of their own investigations. So there's a whole raft of areas where we work with the armed forces, not least of which the ironically named Operation California that's deployed every summer in Skegness, where we work with RAF personnel and they take their drug dogs on patrol on the streets with Lincolnshire police officers to basically check that people going into venues in the East Coast aren't taking drugs in. It gives real life experience to their dogs, which obviously is valuable, but at the same time it gives an extra asset to Lincolnshire and keeps Skegness safe. So there's a whole range of different things that are going on in that space. She also chairs the Criminal Justice Board, and through that it means that all of those criminal justice partners are sort of working together and feeding back some of that information back into the armed forces personnel is really important, because you know, whether you're in the RAF or not, you and your family are residents of our county. An awful lot of the personnel don't live on base, they live in communities around the county. So making sure they're getting that information feedback is really important. And also finally, just linking to the young people's work that she's doing, that also is important, because there are lots of young people in the county whose parents are involved in the armed forces. So it sort of leaks into lots of different areas, but yeah, she's very active across all of that.
Thank you very much indeed. Next question, Dr. Haggerty. Thank you.
This is around the community safety and prevention in partnership part of the report. And you talk about the reduction of reoffending being fundamental in reducing crime within local communities, sort of that longer term initiative. You give some really good specific examples, being DAD, which Ofsted recognised as good practice, which is excellent. And so sort of the question is around that educational element, and asking if there is like an overarching project that brings all of the wider stakeholder groups together, that's more aligned to that basic educational need. I think particularly around male offenders, not necessarily young people, where their literacy, numeracy and IT stops them being able to reintegrate back into society. And I'm also aware that the MCA have the adult funding budget, so I wondered if there was sort of a collective approach of supporting education within that area.
What I would say is I really wish there was. So the reason I picked up the funding for the Being Dad was because another agency in Lincolnshire cut the funding. And I felt that the outcomes were so important that I would step in for a year to see whether funding could be found or whether I could persuade that agency to pick it back up. It doesn't seem likely they will. There seems to be a prevailing wind that if it's not statutory, it can be cut. And that prevents good partnership working, in my opinion, because it's cost shunting from one agency to another and making tough decisions then about what else we cut to fund that. So yeah, I don't think there is. I did raise with the Mayor that actually I would really welcome her speaking to other mayors around the country to get support for the fact that the government has, I mean, I think rough figures, but under the previous government, the adult education budget for prisons was slashed significantly. And whatever your politics, usually certain things come with certain changes of government. And the thing I was hoping from the new government coming in was a greater investment into education, because that historically is what tends to happen. Their response to education in prisons was a 40% further cut on top of the cuts it had already had. It's pennies relatively to the country, but it's a significant risk to reoffending when you don't invest in basic numeracy, literacy and those skills in prisons. And I did say, given that they have responsibility for this area, I think that the mayors should get together and lobby nationally for a reinstatement of that budget. It's a very small amount of money, but actually it would make a big difference. And given that, you know, the Mayor is really clear, she wants to make sure that there are better educational attainment for numeracy, literacy across the county. Well, this is a cohort of people in our county that are probably the most deprived in that space. So I hope that the mayors will collectively try and help get government to change that. But at the moment, it is still a gap.
And I guess it's about working with those wider partners, further education, local authorities as well, that hold funding for that.
Just to add, the Deputy PCC also sits on the Prison Employment Advisory Board, so sees what goes on internally there. And from a preventative education perspective, LCC has a service which is the Stay Safe team, and they go in and provide education into schools. And they go into all of the schools across Lincolnshire and do a fabulous job. We have funded some posts within the police education team as well, around violence against women and girls. And the PCC, as you can expect, gets quite a lot of requests for funding for different pieces of education and prevention. What we always do is make sure that we liaise with the Stay Safe team to make sure that we're not duplicating and to make sure that there's an evidence base for anything that's being delivered. Schools are a really busy space, and normally people come to us and say, we want to get into schools to provide this, so it's really important that we are coordinated and not commissioning separate things that don't align.
Thank you, very helpful, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next couple of questions from Mr. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, just a couple of questions about impact, and it's good to see that you've reflected some positive impacts in your report. Two things caught my mind, many others, but the two things in particular, hotspot patrols and the town boards, which you talk about the impact and success that they've had, but Gainsborough seems to be an outlier. I wonder if you could say something about that.
Yeah, I mean, the good news in this, we know it's an outlier, and we know that because we've been able to invest the money and actually evaluate and understand. And the net result of that is that additional intervention is now being brought to bear to try and tackle that. It's sometimes quite difficult to be specific as to why something's bucking the trend. It can be that there's particular challenges in a particular area at a particular time that are just going to take a bit longer, and it may well be related to that. The thing that I would say about Gainsborough, there's an incredibly active and positive police inspector who leads the neighbourhood policing across that area, exceedingly well respected. I get nothing but compliments from elected members and others for the work he does with them. So the right person is in place to really get to the bottom of that. I think it's just a case of historically there have been some challenges across Gainsborough, and it's knowing which interventions at a partnership level, because it really is tackling societal challenges rather than just policing ones, are going to make the best and lasting difference. And I think it's just a case of a more sustained approach is required before we'll start seeing the change in Gainsborough. But as a result of the work that's done, it's enabled us to say, well, actually, this is an area that does require the further investment. And targeted spending, I think, is really important, because if you're just spending everywhere in a piecemeal approach, you're not really tackling the problems. So it's quite tricky to be specific, but it is an outlier in a few areas, and that's why we're determined to sort of focus on it and work on it as a partnership.
Thanks for that. Actually, the reason it caught my eye is, and it's some years ago now that I did work with the Youth Offending Service, but Gainsborough did seem, this is only anecdotal from my own experience, but Gainsborough did seem to feature quite prominently in terms of the young people that were coming through. So, as you say, it's a historical issue. I'm glad to see that it's sort of been brought to the front of the queue, potentially, in that respect. The other one, which, again, this is just something that caught my eye, but you mentioned the virtual kiosk in Mablethorpe as being good uptake there. I just wondered, is that something you're looking to roll out? And what's the actual impact that that's had? I got a sense of it's something that's a success, but I'm not sure to what extent and how it is a success.
No, and I think to be fair, that's something that needs more time to be evaluated in the round. But in the sense that, are people using it? Do they value it? Is it making them feel like this is a valuable resource to them? That all seems to be very positive. And that in and of itself, when you go, well, is it making people feel safer? Is it making people actually safer? Well, it's certainly making people feel that they have got somewhere to go, you know, to have a voice, but also to get information. And so I think that's really useful. But it is partly the fact that you have got as I said before, not just a settled community, but quite a large transient community that changes rapidly over the summer months. And I think it is important that there needs to be policing services for that. But obviously that goes beyond just Lincolnshire residents. They're Lincolnshire residents for a week or two, but then you've got others that are residents for months while they're in their own static caravans over a period of months, and others that live here all the time. So it's quite a mixed community in a way that we don't see elsewhere. So I don't think it'll be a universal offer because it might not be appropriate to be. But one of the things we are looking at is how specifically the police can reach into communities appropriately to provide information, receive information, and actually just not just rely on people going to police stations, which clearly by the footfall is not happening. There are people that will go to police stations because they have to. They very seldom go for any other reason. So it's finding ways of allowing the public to access service and information, as I said before, in ways that we maybe haven't thought of before. So there's quite a bit of work going on to look at best practice and what else is happening elsewhere. But we are looking at that model, and it might be that it's rolled out elsewhere, but I don't think it'll be universally everywhere.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, Commissioner. Page 51, you make reference to positive outcomes and that they've increased by 6.5% compared to 24-25. Can you give us any detail on what areas they've increased?
I mean, I can obviously get you that detail, but I don't have it at my fingertips, but it's not a problem to provide it, I don't believe. Yeah, so yeah, well, there's a specific definition around it, but we'll give you that. That's not a problem. We'll provide it.
Thank you for that. And you've already alluded to this, I think, but it would be just good to just get some more clarity around where you are with the Engage programme with the Inspectorate. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a really positive programme, and I think the worst thing you could do is rush to get out of it. You could try ticking all the boxes and comply with the letter of it, not the spirit of it, and that's not the approach we're taking. What the chief is doing is making sure that everything is taken on board as good, meaningful advice and support, and then applying that in a real-world way to long-term improvements for the force. And that ultimately is the approach I want them to take. There was the last meeting was a couple of weeks ago, something like that, and there is a new temporary head of the Inspectorate, Michelle Skier, and she seems very robust and clear about what she wants and how she wants it to be, and that's clarity is king with all of this stuff, so that's really helpful. There's a positive ongoing sort of supportive relationship, not just with them, but actually the people that are in the room, the Home Office, you've then got the College of Policing, you've got National Police Chiefs Council, and they are held accountable for the support that they are offering, and equally the force is held accountable for the things it's saying it will do. As I say, my issue is still, I feel there is a little bit of an understanding gap between where we really were and the fact, I think, it's one of those things, I'm sure they've heard a million times people saying, do you know what, it's really tough and money's hard. So you get a little bit immune to hearing people say it. So when somebody really means it, then it's not necessarily given the same gravity as it maybe should be. And I think there's a little bit of that, because every force in the country would say, we're hard up, we need more money. And notably, in our most similar force group, Cumbria, a couple of years ago now, the chair of their police federation wrote an article in the national press about how hard up they were and how they'd only got 256 police officers per 100,000 population, where Poland and Italy have got closer to 400 to 450. Now, I would agree. The difference is we had got 126, so they'd got nearly twice as many as we had. But in their eyes, they didn't have enough. So it's all relative. And I think some of that conversation has not necessarily landed in the way I would have hoped, and we're still very much under that pressure of, well, why haven't you delivered it yet? You've had the money 20 minutes. And I just think there's a bit of realistic expectation needed around some of that. But actually, I think everything that is being discussed is the right content. The force just need to be able to have breathing space to get it delivered.
Thank you. Did I pick up that you're going to be re-inspected shortly?
Yes, the inspection should have been about now. And I wrote to the minister, the police minister, copying the chief HMI, as was, Andy Cook, saying that I felt the force just needed longer. It was too soon. And they agreed and have moved it back. So I think November is when the inspection is. But for anybody that knows, that means that they're coming in about now to start the process. So literally, as we're trying to do all this stuff, we're going to have inspectors coming in, looking into everything, ready for the final inspection in November. And it's an incredibly tough process. It's like Ofsted on steroids. And you're doing that at the same time as trying to deliver all this improvement and everything out. It's really, because it's the same handful of people trying to do it all. And that's the problem. So when the chief's going, well, I need my strategic plan delivered, and I want operational plans, and I want this, and I want that, and at the same time, can you prepare for all of this? It's a really big ask. So I don't underestimate the challenge. I know the chief's working relentlessly with his team to get it done. But as I say, my expectation is that they will do their very best towards it. The reality part of it tells me this inspection is too soon to see all the improvements that ultimately will come.
Thank you for that. Councillor Beale, you wanted to come in.
Thank you. Commissioner, you had alluded previously to the belief that the inspectorate are more geared to how a large metropolitan police force should operate. Do you still believe that, or do you think the new head of the inspectorate is going to be more understanding of us rural areas? Thank you.
It's difficult to say, because obviously she's new in post, and so we will see. I think it's the process itself rather than the people, if that makes sense. I think the people are genuinely wanting to deliver their best from the inspectorate. I've no doubt at all. The issue is, it's a bit like saying, well, we want you all to be driving a top-of-the-range BMW. So we're going to judge what you're driving against that. Has it got all the features and functionality, the top speed, everything of this car? And then giving you the budget to buy a Fiat Punto. And saying, why is your Fiat Punto not as good as what we're asking? We go, well, they both drive, they both get to the destination. It's just we're having to probably not have all the functionality. So we're having to maybe manage without air conditioning, manage without a DAB radio, but we'll still get there. And actually our outcomes are still good. We're still getting to the destination, but being told, no, that's not good enough. We're marking you down because you haven't got air conditioning, because you haven't got sat-nav, etc. And that's my frustration, is if you want equality of delivery, you need equity in how much money you're providing in the first place. And then it's reasonable to say, well, hang on, you've got a similar level of funding based on the conditions you face, you absolutely should be delivering. That isn't there yet. I'm hoping that if this policing review reaches its conclusion, and I'm not convinced it necessarily will, as soon as Treasury finds out the bill for completely throwing all the police forces in the air and changing them, I'm not sure will necessarily be a priority that sits above defence, for example. Then you look at that and go, if they get that right, that problem should go away, because forces will have enough resource to be able to deliver, and then it's perfectly reasonable to hold them accountable in a similar way. But when you look at some of our outcomes, they were top quartile in the country, yet we're being told, yeah, but you're not following all of the bits you need to follow. And that's the bit for me, is sometimes you go, well, the outcomes matter. You know, you can't ignore the outcomes, but equally, I totally get that the force has to follow the rules and regulations and everything else. And it's that difficult balance, but hopefully the new funding regime will address it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams, question, thank you.
Cybercrime. You mentioned that it's been identified as one of the critical national threats within the strategic policing requirement. And the last performance review data suggested that in Lincolnshire we've had an eye-watering 75% increase on cybercrime. Something you were going to take up with the APCC. I just would welcome any comments on progress, what the significance of that matter is.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a couple of different areas here, because you've now got cyber-enabled crime, I suppose is what I'd call it. So where people are using technical capability to commit crime is roughly 50% of all crime. Yet nationally we spend 1% of policing budgets on it. Well, that can't continue, frankly. They're going to need to put more money into it. But what's happening as part of the review is the new National Policing Centre will take on some national function. So it'll take some things from the Met, some things from the National Crime Agency, some things that local forces are doing 43 times over, or 9 times over in the regional organised crime units. So some of those functions will go. And cybercrime is a good example of that, where a lot of the international threat and the larger national threat will be dealt with once properly at the centre, which I think is totally the right response. That it's crazy that you've got 43 forces doing everything slightly differently. Some have got more resources than others. When you go, well, actually, the criminals committing it usually aren't on your patch. They're somewhere else, and they might not even be in your continent, let alone your county. So that is something that at the moment is being looked at nationally, and we can't sort of know exactly how that will look and feel, but they're working through that. I think a subset of that is the fraud element, which is a significant problem for everywhere, including Lincolnshire. And the one thing you can't do is prevent totally people trying to commit fraud, whether it's through the computer, through phones, through physical knocking on doors, whatever it is, all of the range of things that are fraud. But what we can do is work really hard to get people to understand how to protect themselves as much as possible. And we ran a really good fraud prevention campaign. We are gearing up to do all of that again. We've updated all the resources, including all the latest threats, to make sure it's relevant. And we'll be getting those packs out to thousands and thousands of people across the county. And we'll be roping in the help of all of our partners to help get those out. And they're free of charge to the public. And part of the next inspection will be on fraud, which is a new thing. So HMI will be inspecting forces against fraud. And I'm fairly confident it's an area we will be found wanting, because every force will be, because it's a new inspection. But actually, the chief is already facing towards this threat. So he's currently, as part of the new operating model, looking at pulling together new people to go and work specifically in the fraud arena. So we're doing more on prevention. We're doing more on the actual tackling. But again, it's going to take a little bit of time for those people to be employed and actually be in post. So there's work going on about, will these be retired police officers coming back as staff, or indeed rehired as police officers? All of that work is ongoing right now. The other element is around the digital forensics team, who again work across a number of different disciplines, but obviously there are very few crimes now where you don't have a digital element. Some of those are cyber crimes, some of them are not, but boosting the number of people and their skills and the kit and the number of licenses they use. And some of the licenses that we need to use are sort of £100,000 a user a year. So these are not cheap things. So all of that work is going on to make sure that the force is fit and able to face the cyber threat, fraud, and the digital forensics element that we need to do.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just looking at the the report. Interestingly, it highlights fraud as being contained effectively in terms of within tolerances. Cybercrime, though, as I said, is a 75% increase, and you've identified it as being something that is likely to increase further, yes, not least with the improvement in the data that you're going to receive. I mean, this is probably a whole discussion, and I get that, and I'm not inviting you to go into detail about that. It might be something that's useful. You're going to come back now, I know, but maybe in the future you can give us an update on that, on that particular issue sometime in the future when you've got more to say.
So the significant change has been the way that the National Crime Agency deliver reports to forces. So they get a lot of reports coming in from the US, Canada, Australia and other places. So that is an established route of information. And historically what they would do is send relevant reports down to forces. They've improved their systems significantly. So have the other agencies in other countries. The net result is the amount of reports has mushroomed coming into the country and therefore being disseminated from the NCA down to forces. So our increase doesn't mean there is more of it, it means we're more aware of it, which is a good thing, but it is overwhelming in its size and scale at the moment. And again, the national work that's going on as to what will sit at the national centre, they're looking at how much of this should sit there versus how much should sit regionally or locally. So again, it's something that until the policing world stops spinning, we won't know exactly where it's all going to sit, but a lot of that is there. So for example, just in one area, the NCA estimate that on a daily basis there are around 750,000 men looking at indecent images of children in England alone. That is a lot of people. And then they're trying to work out, well, are any of these unique new images, are there children to protect, are they, you know, there's a whole raft of things that go with that. So all of that is a bigger thing than Lincolnshire Police can deal with on its own. So there are certain things that come down as reports and they can action them and get on with them, but even those are growing and somebody needs to work out, can we action this? Who's going to go and action it? So I think all of that will come out in the new operating model of the Chief, the new national policing work, and then we'll have a clearer idea of where we are, but it will be a few months, I think, before that will shake out.
Councillor Trotter, you've got a question, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Good morning, Commissioner. The annual report highlights a range of activities and initiatives. If you're able, can you name 3 achievements which have delivered the greatest measurable benefits to residents, and what independent evidence demonstrates where these benefits were achieved? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty is I could give you 3 things that I particularly, for want of a better, I think that they have been good initiatives, they've delivered benefit, but the way you framed the question, you want more detail than that, which is totally fine, but I will need to get you it and come back to you because I can't just give you that level of detail off the top of my head. Again, the offer is always there, Chairman. When you've got those kind of detailed questions, if I get them in advance, I'll bring the information with me, not a problem, but otherwise, you know, don't take it amiss, I'll take it away, I'll get you the proper information and then I can come back to you with that level of detail, which I'm more than happy to share.
I'm quite happy if you want to share with which personal achievements you feel, if you're able, for starter for 10. Thank you.
Okay, well, funding feels like quite a milestone. Being able to actually pay the wages of everybody we've got on the payroll and bring more people into the organisation across all key areas, I think is significant. I think that is very, very good. I think the work we did around fraud, the fraud pack work, has had an impact on thousands and thousands of people across the county. We know anecdotally from speaking to people the difference it's made. I've had people literally say to me, after getting the fraud pack, I didn't fall victim to something I otherwise would have. And often this is people's life savings, and it's massively underreported because people very mistakenly feel embarrassed that they've been caught out, and it's very easy to be caught out. We can all be in that position. I'm still very proud of the work that we're doing with the IAM, what was the Institute of Advanced Motorists, working to get young people through their advanced driving. I think getting young people to be safe on our roads is something that is hugely important. We know under 25s disproportionately make up casualties on our roads. It's a dangerous place to be. And speaking as somebody whose daughter's about to take a driving test, it frightens me a lot to know that she will be in that space. So being able to continue that work really matters. And actually, the final thing I'd say is the work that we do with prisons. The Prisoners Building Homes project, which is going to get into fruition, but we've started that work, sitting on the employment board to try and make sure people stay out of prison and get meaningful jobs. All of those kind of things I think are super important. To be fair, the things that are in the annual report are all good things. And there's 10 times as many things we will have said we don't think we can afford to do that, to concentrate on these things. So these are, if we've done them, we've got to that level of comfort that they're things we want to do.
Just finally, I know you've just mentioned the prisons again. Will you be using the proceeds of crime if you're lacking in getting funding for the prisons? Is it something you think, or do you have to allocate that money possibly to other projects? Because obviously that seems to be a really positive funding from proceeds of criminals, basically.
Yeah, we did use proceeds of crime to fund that. That's where that funding came from. So it wasn't police budget money that funded the prison work. It came from proceeds of crime. So we can do that. The difficulty is with the POCA money. It's one-off. It's not recurrent. And although we obviously get it every year, you don't know how much you're getting every year because it's money taken from criminals through the court process. It is useful to be able to do things. In that case, that service would have just stopped. So it was useful to be able to keep it going. But I can't pick up everything that other agencies want to stop funding. That's the reality. And, there have been some cost shunts going on. Other gaps are emerging that aren't necessarily directly policing, but they might be around things like homelessness, for example, which have a knock-on effect both for the vulnerable people, but also then potentially for policing. Funding into areas tackling mental health and other things. All agencies are under pressure, but I think we need to get better at consulting each other about the potential impacts of those decisions. So I get people have to make tough choices, I get it, but it's useful to know in advance rather than after the fact.
Thank you, Councillor Trotter. Councillor Burke, I think you've got a question.
Thanks very much, Chair, and good morning, Commissioner. I'm just looking at page, I think it's 30 of your report, where you talk about the additional funding, and I know that you and the Chief Constable have welcomed that, and the Chief Constable's made some press statements as well, which I think are very positive. And you've talked about the base of police officers and 50 PCSOs. Just guide me. So in real terms, how many more police officers and PCSOs do you expect to see operational, say, within this year? And so there's 2 more years of funding that they've talked about, and you've talked about. Do you have a feel for the increases we'll get in those two, so across the three years? I base this just on questions that the public are asking us. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, there have been, although we budgeted for 50 PCSOs, because we didn't know what the funding was going to be, we didn't run a recruitment at that before we knew whether we could pay them effectively. So it got down to about 32, thereabouts. And so as soon as we knew the funding was coming in, we put in a recruitment of PCSOs, which was a cohort of 20. I think there's 18 currently left in training. So that will take it back to the 50, which is what's in the budget. It would be lovely to have more, but the funding as we know it pays for that. The police officer number, looking at the number, so the high point, if you like, is around 1,240, where at the moment we are about 1,188, unless somebody retired this morning. But it's so that's the sort of scale of increase net. But the difficulty is there's about 60 people retire every year, or leave the service. So 60 you need just to stand still, and then everything else is additionality. Because we missed a recruitment, we're putting that back in this year, which is why this year we're recruiting more. That's a good thing. It also means that the chief's looking at direct entry detective route, using Police Now to actually train people specifically to come in as detectives. In addition, we're looking at transferees, so they're coming in with experience and knowledge, and particularly into certain specialist areas. And then on top of that, you've got new recruits, some of whom have been specials, some of them have got no policing background at all, and it's a whole range of people. The problem is, they're not instant police officers. They obviously have to go through training. Once they've done their initial 20 weeks, they then have to go out on station. You've then got to provide them a mentor. They've then got all of that. Now, what we've got is a significantly young in-service cohort of people across the county. So young in-service sergeants, young in-service inspectors, young in-service PCs. And they're all working really hard and doing a great job. But you're getting quite young in-service people to mentor brand new people presents challenges of its own. So the force are recruiting as quickly as they reasonably can, especially given the other constraints, which are the number of trainers available and training facilities available. So all of that is a barrier, but yeah, so 1140 is the high point, 1240, and at this point, trying to maintain the 50 PCSOs.
Thanks for that very full answer. Can I just, you're just making me think, so in terms of the experience gap, then are there special measures that Chief Constables had to take to deal with that, or is it just, you just have to put up with it?
Well, I would say it comes with his job. He's the operational leader, he's corporation soul of the police. You know, he's got 30 years experience, he's a really good Chief Constable, he's got a great command team around him. I had a meeting with the Superintendents Association the other day, and they again are a really good cohort of superintendents, and they very much are on the same page. So it feels like a strong, united leadership for the force, aware of the challenges and keen to work to resolve them. I mean, some of the things we're doing, for example, working with the College of Policing to get as many people through things like the new training regimes for neighbourhood policing, which is a new course that's offered, making sure detectives are trained and accredited, making sure the people working in the areas dealing with protecting vulnerable peoples are trained and accredited, because they were trained, but then we need to get their portfolio work done to get them accredited. So all of that is being done. So making sure they've got the right tools to do the job, but then, as we know, experience has to be time served. You can't give them that. You can give them the knowledge of your experience, but you can't give them the experience. So that will just take a bit of time.
Thanks very much for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that concludes the item on your annual report, Commissioner. We'll move now to item 10, the delivery of the police and crime plan. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It sort of probably overlaps with some of that, really, but again, we've sort of given some information as well about how the local and national picture is, as well as everything that we are sort of working through at the moment. So I'm happy to take any questions, should there be any.
Thank you. First question, Dr. Haggerty. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, within the report, you explain what you plan to achieve and what's been undertaken so far in those plans. there's the outputs, so you give examples of like 136 new police recruits, and you report on, on the inputs, and then you report on the outputs, so like your QR codes, the increase in clicks through to the website, and that's all really helpful. What would be more useful and extremely useful to understand, though, would be the impact of those initiatives on the local communities and the residents. That then sort of allows for the public value of the propositions to be put forward. So I guess my question is it possible to produce a report or a table that shows the impact against those initiatives, perhaps even RAG rated, so that successes can be identified early, and then any adjustments that need to be made to realign them can also be sort of brought to the panel and discussed as well, thus hopefully supporting you and keeping them on track.
Are there any specific initiatives that you're
I think it was
of?
just in general, I guess, looking at the report, there's lots of inputs and outputs, but it's like, so what's been the impact of that? The bit of the so what factor, if you like. And then, are you on track to be where you would expect to be, thus the RAG rating, so that we could support if need be? Or show any early flags that says, great, look at the impact this is already having.
Yeah, I mean, I do recognise what you're saying. I think some things lend themselves to that, some don't. So it can't be a universal thing because it just won't work that way. It's something that we can take away and look at. I'm not against looking at it. I just can't give you a really clear, straight answer and saying, I'll do it on this and not on that. It's something that needs looking at. I understand that there's been a recent conversation with the Chief Executive about the information that the panel wants and how it wants it presented. So I think it's one of those conversations that maybe needs taking outside the meeting to work up exactly what is being asked and how we might respond to it. But as I say, that's not me saying no. I just can't give you a clear answer to the question, but happy to look at it.
So obviously we've slightly changed the reporting this time, in that previously we used to report on kind of generically everything we'd done against the 4 pillars for the previous 3 quarters, whereas this time we've focused on victims and the vulnerable. So the point has been made by panel members previously that there's a wish to move towards more looking at impact and outcomes. For this report, because we've very specifically focused on victims, a lot of that kind of information is more included in the victim impact report, which is annually published and which is referenced in here. But I absolutely take your point, and I think it will be easier for us to demonstrate the impact and the outcome when we come on to some of the other pillars around specific initiatives that the PCC's funded.
Thank you, because that'd be really helpful, because then we don't have to wait till the end of a project to say, you know, this was a success and look what happened, or actually it didn't quite go the way we expected. I think if we can have those impact measures throughout the period of the project, then it allows us to be able to see then what actually is happening and where we can support if need be.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a question. In your report, you referred to a regional meeting with Lord Hogan Howe. I just wondered if you can give us any more details about that. Clearly, it's about reorganisation.
Yeah, my Chief Executive attended that meeting. It was made exceptionally clear it was not a consultation, that the purpose of the meeting was to gather information, really, to enable the debate at a national level about really how many forces there should be and what services should sit where. I think what's really tricky is some of the really meaty, important stuff isn't in scope of that. So, council tax equalisation. So if you merge Lincolnshire with Norfolk and we charge completely different council tax, how does that work? You get completely different national funding. How does that work? All of those kind of really big questions. And also if you move away from having forces working together in the regional organised crime unit geography, so the East Midlands is that geography, how does that work? What does it do to the regional organised crime unit? So there's some really, really, really big things in there, but I'm more than happy for you to comment, Jo, on the actual meeting.
Thank you. So one of the points that I raised at the meeting was noting that the funding formula is out of scope of Lord Hogan Howe's review, and somewhat similar to what the PCC's mentioned about HMIC inspections, it seems incongruous to look at reshaping force without the consideration of the impacts of funding and precept. the model that's being considered, it was mentioned that there are potentially savings to be found, and the model of Police Scotland was referenced. What we haven't seen is the costs that went alongside the delivery of Police Scotland. We've only seen the savings side of the equation, so that was another point made. And we did also discuss outcomes in terms of Police Scotland have seen some positive outcomes, I understand, but they haven't been shared. And one of the challenges we put was whether the outcomes had been seen only at a national level. So I think the PCC mentioned earlier the concern that if we were, for example, merged with the East Midlands, the risk that resources would be transferred and that resources and funding would go to the areas that have got more significant issues than we have, because actually Lincolnshire is a relatively safe space compared to other areas. And they were all concerns that were flagged on the day. It got fed in. We'll see whether it's reflected in the outcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a time, I know there was a timeline, was it the autumn? I know that, summer, goodness me. That could spread into the autumn, of course. Okay, Mr. Williams, next question, thank you.
Yeah, just on the style of the report and focusing on one of the 4 pillars, we had in our pre-meet discussion, I think it was generally very positively received. So thank you for that, Joe. And really touching on the earlier question from Pat, what I was going to talk about was whether you could identify any key areas of particular concerns in delivering aspects of your commitment to protecting and supporting victims and the vulnerable, where are the main pressure points and so on. But I think that really plays into the discussion about, okay, outcomes impact and how that might be more usefully reflected in future reports. From my point of view, I know we're trying to find a date for our next meeting, but I wonder if that might be something that we can actually focus on at that stage, although I'll welcome any comments you have on the particular pressure points within victims and the vulnerable at the moment.
I think there's one that's referenced, and it's not a pressure point, but it's something that we are looking to work on, and that's making sure that people who are underrepresented in accessing victim services are represented. So it's a national issue in that people who have disabilities, people who are not from white middle class communities tend to access victim services less. It's been identified in national reports. We have quarterly meetings whereby each of our victim providers is required to give us information and case studies, and that reflects the same thing. So we've committed to doing a piece of work this year where we'll establish focus groups with organisations that support those underrepresented communities so that we can make sure that we target our activities around raising awareness and understanding what those barriers are so that we can address them. One of the big challenges we have, and we've escalated this to the Ministry of Justice, is that we don't have a very mature provider market in Lincolnshire or extensive provider market. And I say that with no disrespect to the providers that we have. Our commission services are absolutely fabulous. But if you take, again, somewhere like Nottinghamshire, they will have a significant number of different providers who are bidding for services, and competition does tend to drive value and quality because people are striving to be the best that they can be. Our local providers have that commitment, but we, for example, don't have what the MOJ would call by and for services. So if you have certain communities, do you have people from those communities who can deliver the services? Therefore, there is that trust already there. So they're things that we are going to be working on over the next year. Sorry, the other one I would add, funding. It's mentioned at the top of the report. We get funding from the MOJ for victim services, which is an annual grant. That grant is based on the funding formula. So we're again disadvantaged. And the PCC tops that up annually to make sure that we can commission the services that we do. There are other things that we would like to commission if we had further funding, where there are gaps, but we're just not in a position to do so.
Sure, thanks for that, Joe. I think, as I say, perhaps we can follow up at our next meeting in terms of highlighting areas of particular success or areas that aren't making the sort of progress that you might want to. Just picking up on what you said there, I think, and again, one for the future, I think, and to bear in mind, perhaps to come back to the panel if and when it becomes an issue. but the potential for tensions between identifying particular areas and ensuring that underrepresented factions of society are given the resources, or sorry, the attention, if you like, that they require, and the potential for tension between that and current discussions around two-tier policing and what might emerge as a result of that debate that is going on at a national level. I mean, I don't know if you've got any comment that you'd like to make on that at the moment, but certainly I think it's something that that is worth keeping an eye on from the panel's point of view in the future.
No, it's always good to comment on something that's not remotely controversial. And you know me, I'm always shy to get involved. But I mean, I think we want to make sure that the people of Lincolnshire feel the services are for them. That's it. And the people of Lincolnshire are all very different from each other, not just for the obvious differences that some people would have, whether that's a disability, whether that's ethnicity or whatever, but actually just the fact Lincolnshire's massive. If you live in Crowland, you don't necessarily even think of Lincolnshire as the place you receive your services. You go to Peterborough Hospital, you tend to cross the border to get things. You don't necessarily feel that large an affinity to our county. And so we want the people of Crowland, Long Sutton, Sutton Bridge and everywhere else, Stamford, Bourne, to feel that these services are for them. We listen to their concerns and that ultimately they are involved at an appropriate level in a way that suits them in that not just decision making but also in the delivery of the services. So I think there's a whole raft of reasons why this is a good thing, but it is really important to make sure that the people of our county feel that the services are for them. They pay for them. It's right. And, you know, I don't think I'll let others worry about the arguments around two-tier policing. If somebody provides me evidence of it, then obviously there's mechanisms for complaints processes to be looked at. But as a point of principle, I don't believe it's developing a two-tier policing system by making sure that you listen to the voices of the residents of the county to make the services work for them.
Thanks for that. Very reassuring. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask you a question about police numbers, but you've already answered that in terms of responding to Councillor Burke. You refer on page 63 of your plan to innovative technologies. That must be quite difficult in terms of developing a strategy around that due to the potential reorganisation plans, whatever they will be, because it's important that whatever's put in place is compatible with other areas. So I just wondered if you've got a response to that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. There are 700-ish different systems in use by policing across 43 forces, which is nonsense, and it needs to be sorted out. And I think the government's vision for having a national centre where a lot of this stuff is managed once, properly commissioned, etc., is great. Not got a problem with that. And as it happens, the head of our digital department sits on the national board helping shape some of that. So we have the right person sort of bringing the right level of expertise and knowledge into what we're doing. I think that what we don't want to do is sit and do nothing while they debate what policing will look like when, frankly, it might not happen because they'll come up against the hard reality of what it costs. So we've got to get on and do things. And there's no question about it. There are things we can do that will make a real life impact, freeing up thousands and thousands of policing hours, making it easier for response officers to actually get their job done and not be bogged down in red tape and processes and filling in forms. So those kind of things have to be done. So looking at best practice, what others are doing, best use of different systems, and it's even things like the niche system, which some people will be aware of, some may not, is where all of the information is put around the crimes and everything else. We are part of the East Midlands plus City of London all being on the same system. Nowhere else in the country does that happen, but we are still all using it slightly differently. We're not getting the full value and benefits out of that. So we're now looking at that and going, you know, what other improvements can we drive out of some of this work? So there are always some things that you can do that are small, others that are big. So for example, there are new technologies coming down the track far too slowly around what you can test at the roadside. So at the moment we know the drug wipes where you can test for cannabis and cocaine. There will soon be trials undertaking for, let's call it laughing gas. There will also be trials for other drug types. There will be evidential quality roadside breathalyzers, which at the moment, you know, you have to take people to the station, blood tests, all of that. So as those things come on, we want to be at the forefront of introducing them. Can we be, as a large rural county, it's good to trial these things in an urban area and somewhere rural. So we're very much pushing, we're more than happy to be innovative and trial things to prove concept, make sure it works, ultimately for the right outcomes for the county. So I think you're right. We're very careful not to be buying, you know, from the snake oil salesman of the world, the new shiny thing that they're going to sell to everybody that's slightly different. But it absolutely is right that we are using innovation to drive out efficiency.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dilks.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I did have a follow-up to the question you didn't ask because Chris had jumped in with his with the numbers, and that was partly. So it's partly there. First of all, I would like to associate myself with, and I'm sure all of us, with the remarks that you made at the opening about the increase in funding that has been achieved. Thank you for that, and we're all hopeful that it does lead to a better service for the people that we represent. As you know, I've questioned before on PCSOs. I regard myself as a champion of PCSOs, having seen in my patch the work that they have done over the years. I regret, of course, that the number over the past 10 years has reduced from 149 to an establishment of 50 for whatever reason over the period. You know, we miss them in the deepings. For some time, as you know, we haven't had any PCSO covering Stamford, Bourne, the deepings, the whole sort of south of South Kesteven. So I'm really welcoming the Chief's announcements and your association with it that we've recruited 17 recruits, and they're going through training now, I assume. It was 20, 3 have dropped out, hoping more don't drop out, because even those 17 will not make up, on the numbers you've given, 32, will not quite make up the 50. So I hope more don't drop out. There is a buzz in my patch at the moment that we're hoping that we are going to get a PCSO. And I'm really asking, has the Chief made any decision on the deployment of those extra, if I can call them that, PCSOs? And if so, when will there be an announcement, do we know?
Yeah, I mean, I very much welcome them. I went to speak to them when they first started and did a Q&A with them, and it was great to see the enthusiasm. And actually, some of the PCSOs are returning PCSOs. So
yes.
They are people that left when the funding was not so clear and have come back to us, which is great. So they're coming with all the experience that brings, as well as the new blood that's bringing sort of enthusiasm and something different. There isn't a clear, this is where they will be deployed yet. It's obviously an operational matter, so I don't input directly into that. But by the time we get to, I think it's around August when they complete training, but certainly when we are going out to the councils with the new operating model, obviously there will be clarity, but you might already be aware before that meeting. So if they've finished training and then they've been put out into patch, you may already be aware that you've got one. But as I say, I haven't got any special insight into where they will go, other than I know the force are working up plans based on what they believe needs to be the geographical spread to support the community.
Thank you for the answer. Encouraging news. I wonder if I could just ask a supplementary. are we assured that all of those that qualify, that complete their training, will be deployed to communities to support neighbourhood policing? I'm hoping none of them will be given desk jobs, if I can call it that. And just to say on the value, just an example of the value of PCSOs, we used to have 2 in the Deepings a long time ago, partly funded by our own parish council, but I won't go into that. But we've recently had a spate of graffiti in the Deepings and Langtoft, and CCTV caught the guys that, I say guys and perhaps gals, I don't know, who did it, of a particular age group. And we sent the CCTV to the police. And of course, I don't know how much time they spent looking at it, but they came back and said, no, I don't think you can identify anybody from that. Now, I know from previous experience that a PCSO who knows the people, knows the community, could have taken that tape into the school using the contacts that he or she would have, and would have been able to identify the young people that did the damage. It's just saying they are valuable.
Yeah, no, I would totally recognise their value, no question about it, and the Chief does, which is why we never went to the point of not having PCSOs, which would have been an easier decision for a Chief to make, to say, well, look, I'll just bolster the number of warranted officers and accept I can't do them, which is exactly what happened in Norfolk. That's the model they have. They don't have PCSOs at all. In fact, they don't have a PCC at the minute. She's resigned. But so they, you know, that is a model, and the Chief was very clear that there is a value to the PCSO role that he wanted to invest in, and I fully support that. You know, I think that is important. So all I can say is, you know, if as a local councillor you wish to make your representations known directly to the Chief Constable in writing, I'm sure you will take advantage of that opportunity. But, you know, he will make those decisions imminently. But the great news is it's great to have them coming into the organisation.
Thank you very much. 2 people wanted to come in. Councillor Trotter first, and then Councillor Beale. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given the recent increase in asylum seeker accommodation in Grantham and other parts of Lincolnshire, has the PCC assessed the impact on local policing demand? If so, what additional pressures have been identified? And do you anticipate the need for even more additional officer numbers, PCSOs as discussed, or funding to ensure local communities continue to receive an effective policing service? Thank you.
I mean, this is something that I've spoken to the force about at a senior level. It is something that I get updates on, and I am confident that the force are doing what they can with the information available to them to make appropriate representations to government. The bit where I think it breaks down is the fact that it's clear to me, and these are my words, not the Chief's, it doesn't appear the same information is being given to local government and policing. And yet both parties are being told they can't discuss what they know with the other. That's an intolerable position. It is not in the best interests of our community. It's not in the best interests of those seeking asylum either, because they need to be protected and kept safe while they are members of our community. So having the right information, accurate information about how many properties there are, how many people are in the properties, what the background information is on the individuals in the properties is vital. And I think there's work to do at a national level for that information to be given in a timely, accurate fashion, both to local government and to policing. So that is something that we're working on with local government partners, representations being made to ministers and to others to try and make sure that there's one version of the truth and it is the truth. Because whether it's cock-up or conspiracy, there are definite differences in the information being provided, and that is not acceptable.
Thank you, Commissioner, for being honest, recognising that, and South Kesteven as a district is moving towards evidence gathering for an Article 4 for smaller HMOs. So I'm glad that you recognise there is an issue with lack of information from above. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beale?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to flag up, following my learned colleague next to me, that South Holland in and around Waplow would also appreciate any help re-getting our PCSOs back as well, please. Thank you.
Well, as you're aware, Councillor, we can have as many PCSOs as we can afford. And so if the County Council would like to give us the £2.5 million it used to a year, we will rapidly recruit some more and distribute them as far and wide around the county and give as much credit to local councillors for that intervention as we can do. So my appeal to councillors ahead of any elections would be, if they can find the funding, it will be gratefully received by their local residents. But you know, we all value the work of PCSOs. They do a great job, not just with young people, but with everybody in society. And yeah, I think they will be highly in demand. And you'll be glad to know one of the questions when I did the Q&A from the outset from one of the PCSOs is, if we want them, will we be issued with bicycles so that we can get around our community, see people, let them see us? That's the kind of ethos you get with PCSOs. They want to be visible, want to be seen, want to engage. And I think that very much goes to the heart of what communities are looking for. Oh, just for clarity, the answer was yes, we'll find you a bike. It's no problem. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, that Dave, Mr. Williams, that final question on the delivery of the police and crime plan. Thank you.
It's not actually a question, just a request. You referenced some reports, performance review plan, for example, and other things. What was the other one? The transformation board meeting minutes. When you do reference a report, if it's available and appropriate to be linked in the report, if you could do that, that would be really helpful, please.
That's absolutely fine. We will do in future. Transformation board is an internal meeting and wouldn't be one that we could share, but we'll make sure it happens in future. I'll also respectively check the report that was submitted and share any with you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the delivery of police and crime plan at item 10. Moving to item 11. I'm very much aware of the time as well. It's 12:30-ish. Moving on to the Safer Communities plan for Lincolnshire. Over to you, Commissioner.
Yeah, as you'll be aware, we make an annual review of this to make sure it's current, relevant, accurate, and taking into account new and emerging risks and changes in legislation, etc. So it's a fairly light touch change, but it's obviously a requirement to bring it to the panel, but also it's useful to bring it to the panel for any comments and views. So that's what it's here for.
Okay, we just have 4 questions at the moment, anyway, on this particular item. Councillor Woodliff, first question, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Oh, no, good afternoon, Commissioner, actually, isn't it? This is about policing that works, basically, and policing to improve public confidence. I do apologise. I'm referencing page 84, which is policing to improve public confidence, but also what's said on page 80. As an example, it has been reported to me that drug users in a certain area of Lincoln are permitted to carry out their illegal activities in public with no apparent restriction. Without going into the operational aspect of this matter, how are you going to convince the public that visible policing to improve public confidence is more than wishful thinking? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Obviously, I can't comment on the specific case because I'm unaware. I think sometimes it's a really interesting point when we talk about drugs. Often I've met with councillors around the county and they've said, well, we know that this particular house is doing a particular thing and whatever. Knowing it isn't the same as having evidence of it. And so obviously the onus is on the police to make sure that they gather evidence. And sometimes there's the reality that taking out somebody that's dealing who can be replaced by 3 o'clock in the afternoon isn't solving the problem for anybody. What you need is to gather enough evidence to go, okay, who are they working with? What's the supplier? And Lincolnshire have been very successful at using that approach. But as you can imagine, that takes some months rather than some days. And so often what can happen in the initial stages of that is that people can make reports and say, well, nothing's happening. I've told them, and they're still dealing from that house or from that street corner. And whilst sometimes it's important that they do take action to protect children near a school or whatever it is, often the more impactful difference is when they gather enough evidence to take out a significant chunk of the operation. And so I can't say that is what's happening in that particular case, but it wouldn't surprise me, given that that is a pattern I've seen over the last decade, is that often people will say, well, I've had it in Gainsborough, for example, I've had it in Stamford, where they go, look, this is known. And when I raise it, the police go, we know, but we're working on this. And actually, I would just say, make sure that people know, report, report, report. It's always worth reporting. Knowledge is power. It will enable them to build a picture, enable them to take action, not just to get rid of the local dealer, but to get rid of a much greater bit of the problem. I think what's difficult is how you communicate that. So partly we're all here, and councillors are really good at getting that information to local communities as well, and sharing that report approach. Having visible policing, we know works. You look at the hotspot patrolling numbers, you know, the additionality that went into Spalding through the town deal board, and also the other areas around the county. We know that had an impact on arrests, but also on prevention, on ASB, on violent crime. So visibility works, we know this. The problem is trying to balance how much visibility you can have versus all the other things we need to spend the money on. So the chief has had to put, rightly, additionality first into the Protecting Vulnerable People's unit because they were under such pressure. The volume that they were dealing with was intolerable for the people in that unit. The public won't see the difference visibly, but it will keep an awful lot of people safe. And that's the difficulty. So it's getting the balance, because I would love there to be many more PCSOs. I'd love there to be greater numbers going into the neighbourhood teams, etc. But what we can do is try and free them up as much as possible from the paperwork side of things. So investing in those things that will free up their time to enable them to be where they want and need to be is part of the key element. How I convince the public it's working? Well, actually, I think good communications is key here. And this is always a challenge, because the public would say, well, why would you have comms officers instead of police officers? Well, getting that balance right is really important, because otherwise the public don't know what you're doing. And you've got to be able to articulate, this is the impact that these people are having in your community. We work with specialist groups and organisations as well, so big swathes of Lincolnshire, very rural, regular meetings with people like the National Farmers Union, the County Landowners Association, all those kind of organisations, to make sure that their thoughts and views are being heard, but equally then they're being told what's going on. So I think regular communication is key, honest, factual, regular communication, but also I think just being clear, this person here is in your community and these are the things they're actually doing, will ultimately lead to that, that delivery. But it's quite an emotive thing. How do people feel safer is as important as are they safer. If you are in your 80s and won't use Lincoln Town Centre because you feel afraid, that has an impact on the economy, on the well-being of the individual, etc. Doesn't matter whether they are safe. They wouldn't go if they don't feel safe. So we've got to make areas feel safe. And that, I think, is one of the key elements that will lead to that trust and confidence.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to come back on that. I want to say that I agree fully with what the Police and Crime Commissioner said. In relation to the example I met, without actually going into any operational matters, I know the matter has been reported to the police and so on. It has occurred in public. It has been going on outside or next to a major educational establishment, and it's been done in public. I mean, the issue really is about things in public. Visibility is very important. As it says on page 80, it says, the public must have trust and confidence in policing and I will hold the Chief Constable to account for delivery. This is very, very important. I think the public need to understand that when they report crime, it will be acted upon and there will be an outcome. And because it's visible policing means outcomes they can see. So this is really the issue here. This is not a matter for operational matters at all. It's really about making sure that the police are seen to be out there and active, because that's what confidence in policing is all about. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Woodliffe. Next question, Dr. Haggerty. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The table at the back of that report that shows the changes really, really helpful. So thank you. Found that most informative. In there, it says there's the removal of the Safer Communities Plan that looks like it had some really strong elements to it. Could I ask why that's been removed?
Yeah, basically we had a Safer Communities team. It was a small team, 4 people plus a team leader. And as part of the previous journey the force were on of reductions, I felt it was totally inappropriate to be expecting the force to reduce by circa 10% and then we not do the same. So the decision we made was to remove that team. It was no reflection on the individuals within the team, but we found alternative ways of doing lots of the work. They were of value as a unit, but it was just simply a case of you have to cut your cloth. I can't expect the Chief Constable to reduce the number of police officers and then the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner feel it's immune from the same. So, you know, a lot of the work that we have been able to continue, we found other routes to, but that's why that element has gone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. A second one from you, Dr. Haggerty. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, in the table on page 94, under to reflect PCC and CC commitment to prevention, reducing offending, you make reference to working with the local prisons on purposeful activities such as training, education, improvement, employability, etc., which is all good. It's just a suggestion, really. Could that also include working with probation and possibly as well looking to work with the MCA, FE colleges and adult education providers and local authorities? So just expanding that partnership.
Yeah, I mean, we do, but we do work with probation already. So with things like the unpaid work programme and things like that, we've worked with them. So that is there. There is some collaboration work that goes on more informally, I would say, with education centres. In particular, Boston College is exceedingly proactive and supportive and work supporting the force in a number of different ways. But they're not the only one, but I pick them out because they're notably very active. There's also the policing course at Lincoln College that goes on, which people will often take as a route to becoming a police officer or PCSA, but actually police staff of all kinds, or indeed going into other areas completely. It doesn't have to be in policing, but that is a huge success. So there are links across that space. I'm not sure why probation wasn't. No, we don't mention all of them, but it does include probation, but it's just not been added in by word, but we can add that in. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Final question from Mr. Williams. Thank you.
The final question, hopefully. Roads policing, the last performance review report, you can tell I've been reading it, it's identified that 3 people are killed and 30 people are injured seriously on average each month across the county. In your update, you highlight education, engineering, enforcement and drunk driving as areas of focus, but not speeding. I wondered why. Because speeding is seen as a significant contributor to incidents of particularly serious injury. That's page 96.
Yeah, I thought it was already in there, and so the bit we've added in doesn't additionally mention it, but I thought it was already in. So I'll double check that, because it absolutely should be, and certainly it is a focus of the Road Safety Partnership, obviously, as well as the police. And one of the challenges the Roads Policing Unit has is that there aren't enough of them to do a 24/7 county-wide roads policing function, and actually, because of the number of deaths and serious injuries, they spend most of their time actually dealing with the serious collision investigation work, which is after the event rather than preventative. And I would love to get to the point where, you know, they're being able to free up their time to a point where they're more proactive. And obviously not everything's about speeding by any means. Councillor Marsh will support that, I'm sure, because I know that's something he has mentioned before. But it is a factor, not least of which when you get very small unclassified roads being a 60 mile an hour and they're a single track. But yeah, it is an important element. It is something that the Road Safety Partnership obviously concentrates on. And to that end, one of the initiatives that we've expanded through the Road Safety Partnership is, as well as the mobile cameras that are deployed around the county, there is now a police motorbike that is utilised with mobile kit by the Road Safety Partnership to actually do speed monitoring in places that the vans could not safely park. So there were sites that were identified as high risk, so you would put a van there, but you physically couldn't put a van there, but it is safe to use the motorbike. In addition, the motorbike is there to support the community speed watch initiative. So where you've got communities that identify, and I will make this up, let's say there's a particular vehicle that travels through at 8:30 on a Wednesday morning at high speed, well, we will then have a capacity to be able to go and support that community and tackle that behaviour. So we are concentrating on the speeding elements. And the other thing that I'm looking at, and I've asked the Road Safety Partnership to explore, is there are a number of things that are offers as part of the education package, and one of those is the equipment that goes to schools and education facilities, and also to things like Lincolnshire Show, which are more interactive to get young people to experience what it's like to be in a collision and everything else. So, and I'm looking at whether we can update that equipment. So it is a focus, and I'll make sure it's in. I'm fairly sure it is, but I'll make sure. Yeah. So the enforcement, I think, is just the catch-all term for all enforcement, including speeding. But yeah, it's definitely not a focus.
Okay, just very briefly then, Operation Snap. How effective is that? Is that seen as being a useful sort of force multiplier in any sense?
Yeah, Operation Snap is the operation that's using dash cam footage submitted, or GoPro footage, often from cyclists, to capture, not speeding because it's not measured, so you can't use it for that, but for incidents on the road that people feel should be reported. So that might be somebody overtaking you on double white lines, or recklessly overtaking you on a bend, or those kind of things, or not stopping at a give way and nearly writing you and your car off. Those kind of things. Now we've seen, and I haven't got the numbers, but we can provide them, a growth in the number of reports, but also significantly a growth in the number of people from those reports that are having action taken against them. So the quality is improving, and that's really good to see. And it does have a very positive impact. What we're working through at the moment is the sustainability of the workforce that do that work. Because there's more of it, we need more people to do it. So that's something that's being looked at the moment at a partnership level, but it is of huge value. I can't remember the numbers, but we can provide them because they are available.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just one point I'd like to raise, Commissioner. I'm really pleased to hear that you're going to have the capability to target individual offenders, because one of the biggest complaints I get as a councillor is the individual idiot who goes to and from work every day outside normal hours, tearing through the villages. And if we could just have some deterrent, because they know there isn't one there at the minute, it will make a massive difference to how communities feel about safety on their roads.
No, I totally support that. And obviously, if they set off earlier to their council meetings, no, I'm only kidding. It is important that you often get one or two individuals that everybody knows, and they make everybody's life difficult. And often, whether that's on the roads or other things, it's antisocial. And it makes people feel impotent if nothing happens. And then when other things happen, they go, what's the point in reporting it? Nothing happens. So we need to break that cycle, and that's an important part of it.
Okay, Commissioner, thank you very much. Thank you for your responses this morning regarding the Police and Crime Plan, Safer Communities Plan and your annual report. Thank you. Thank you for attending, Julie, also. I was going to we'll just do the next item on complaints, and then we'll have a 10-minute break. Thanks very much. Okay, Joanne, over to you for item 12, complaints position statement. Thank you.
Thank you. So as the report notes, there was one complaint received during the period 17th of January to the 29th of May. That complaint didn't constitute a matter to be recorded as a formal complaint.
Okay, thank you. And you clearly wrote back to the complainant about that and informed them of the position.
Yes, so the complaint and the response, I understand, has been shared with the panel officers, so the panel can have sight of that if they wish.
Okay, thank you. And also around complaints, we do have a subgroup looking at the management of complaints, and we will be reforming that group. That group was paused for a period of time, but just for your information, we will be reforming that group shortly.
Thank you. As earlier referenced, I meet with yourself and some other members of the panel to discuss the reporting that comes in, so if there's any issues or queries that you want to raise about that subgroup at that point, we can cover it there.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And thank you for your time this morning. Okay, so I'm going to call, we've been talking now since 10 o'clock, really. I know we started the formal meeting at 11, so I think a 10-minute break is called for. Okay, well, so we're now live streaming and we'll reconvene the meeting. So if we now move to item 13 on the agenda, balanced panel objective. Nicola, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As members of this panel are well aware, what the way in which the panel is constituted is that we receive nominations from district authorities and from the Lincolnshire County Council based on 3 nominations coming from Lincolnshire County Council and 1 from each of the district councils to form a panel of 10 members, which includes, on top of that would be our independent co-optees. And then it is for this panel to receive those nominations and determine whether that meets its balanced panel objective as set by the legislation. So in terms of those nominations from the constituent authorities, they are not chosen by us. That's not a decision of the panel to determine. We receive those nominations, so the panel composition is what is dictated by those authorities. And so this panel's responsibility now is to look at those nominations, look at its composition and determine whether it meets that balanced panel objective, which is looking at political balance of Lincolnshire as a whole. That includes the political makeup of each of those constituent authorities, whether it meets the geographical requirements of whether there's representation from all areas of the county, and whether it's got the skills and expertise that it requires in order to fulfil its objectives. So that objective is taken all together. It's not each bit on its own. It's a collective of requirements that make up that objective. So what this panel does is it does a calculation of proportionality to assess whether the political element of that balanced panel objective can be met. And the approach that's closest to the spirit of the legislative requirements is to apply what local authorities would do in terms of proportionality, which is the requirements that are in with the Local Government Act 72, the Local Government Housing Act 89, and of course the legislation that overpins this panel, Police Responsibility and Social Responsibility Act 2011. So on that basis, the proper officer has reviewed the political balance across the entire county and has determined that the figures within the report are reflective of the proportionality over the representative areas that make up the panel area. So then it's now for the panel to consider that report and decide whether you consider that any of the recommendations that are made within the report would be suitable. You could accept those nominations to the panel, as you have done, and accept that actually in whole meets the balanced panel objective, taken all together, those 3 elements, or you could look at options of co-option if you feel that co-option would better meet. So it's not necessarily about does it not meet, it's can it better meet those objectives by co-opting additional members onto the panel. So there are a number of notes that I just want to bring to the panel's attention. Obviously what we do is when we are looking at proportionality, because there are no prescribed rules within the legislation that overpin this panel that determine exactly how proportionality is calculated, we have to assume that the way in which local authorities calculate proportionality is the methodology that is best used in order to do that. And that includes not taking coalitions into account. That's part of the legislation. And also looking at independent groups that are on individual authorities, not to assume that they are a collective. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Nicola? Councillor Dilks.
Thank you. I welcome recognition that we may not be meeting the legal requirements, because I don't think we are, and I don't think we have for quite a period. Not us, this panel, but how the panel is constituted. I don't think there's been substantial changes to the political makeup in the past year, frankly. I don't think we met the requirement last year, and I've raised it here several times before. I appreciate it is a challenge, particularly when you know the 7 district councils send us who they send us to represent the district councils, and that's fine. When I first came on to this panel, as an independent member of the county council, I had to wait a number of weeks until the balance had been worked out with what the other authorities had sent us, to see if there was a place for me as an independent, and there was, so that was fine. That's changed since, but I don't think we've got enough information here in the report that we've got before us, I regret to say that, to make a decision today. And I think it would be a dangerous decision to make it. To me, the starting point has to be, where is the evidence? What are the numbers of all the political groups added up to get, you know, what is the political balance across? And we haven't been given that today. We were given it a year ago. I've got to say it was, you know, we could argue with it. And whilst I appreciate what Nicholas said, it is, I come from South Kesterton. We're independent. We're an independent-led, but we've got 4 groups of independents that make up the administration of the council, and we work together. We've all been elected as independents, and there's 24 of us, but we don't count apparently because we've got, you know, I'm in the independent group. We've also got a Democratic independent group, a Grantham independent group, and a South Kesterton independent group that together make up 24 and the bulk of the administration. It seems crazy if we can't call those people independents and make them count towards the political makeup. If you look across this county, across the county of Lincolnshire, of the 8 constituent bodies, independents, candidates, councillors are elected as independents in bigger numbers than any of the parties apart from the Conservative Party. I recognise that, you know, so independents are the second sort of biggest group, if I could call them that. I don't think any of the options in here would actually help us at all. You know, I'd particularly say, how does a non-aligned member, which is one of the options, there are 13 non-aligned members that I've counted across the 8 councils. How does a non-aligned member improve the political balance? I don't think it does. You know, particularly if you look, there's actually a group in one council, a group of non-aligned members. They are a political group, but they are a group that is non-aligned. So it is a challenge, I accept that, but I just don't think we can do it today, Mr. Chairman, based on this report. The starting point, as I say, has to be the table that we can look at, or whoever's going to look at, and say this is, and we can agree on what the political balance is as a starting point. I hope that's useful. I'll shut up at that point. But you know, you can look in any of the councils. It is a challenge. I recognise that, but I don't think that the options that we've got today actually help to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. Councillor Beale, thank you.
Thank you. I take sort of a backward step and ask, why does it have to be politically balanced? I'm here on behalf not of South Holland District Council, but the people of South Holland. I'm not here to represent a political party, and I think from the discussions we've had today and at other meetings, we may have different political views, but we're all of a like mind when it comes to holding the Commissioner to account. I totally agree with the need to make sure that geographically there's the right numbers so that we represent all the areas within Lincolnshire, because we do have urban, rural and industrial, etc. That's the important thing. Looking forward, bearing in mind, of course, we know that in 2 years, less than 2 years now, the police and crime is going to be absorbed most probably within the mayoral authority, and therefore any governance overview of that will also be there. I would suggest that we leave it as it is at the moment, and I'm happy to propose it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other member got any comments? Councillor Burke.
Yeah, I hear Phil, and I think Phil is technically correct. But I also do take the point, and I'll be reporting in my report on the changes proposed to police and crime panels. In other words, they will cease to exist in their current form. They'll be replaced by leaders of district councils. And they will decide what they're going to do. And I think that this system is far better than the one proposed, by the way. This model is closer to the one that Phil's talking about than what is going to be proposed. So, yeah, what do you do about it? It works, I've got to say, and I think this panel makes very high-quality decisions on a quite objective basis, without fear or favour. So I'm reluctant to change something that works. But I should argue, in the interests of fairness, if we were changing it, we're changing it to make sure that there's a political reflection. But it's a non-political body, which arrives at non-political decisions based on the needs of the people of Lincolnshire. So I'm inclined to then go and say, if it ain't broke, let's not fix it.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Marsh and then Councillor Woodliff.
Not wishing to split hairs, but if it's the fact that we've got political initials behind our names, let's take those off and just be either independent or elected, and take the political thing off. So I would just be Councillor Graham Marsh, elected.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodliff?
Oh, I've got nothing left to say. I agree with everything that's Councillor Marsh has said. Yes, we're just ordinary councillors representing the people that elected us. I don't consider myself to be political here. I'm here representing the people of Boston Borough Council, as Councillor Beale and so on. I think Councillor Beale spoke a great deal of sense there. We're not politically here. I'm not here to pursue a political point. I'm here to represent my residents. And that's far. So let's just call ourselves all independent, if you like. Thank you.
Councillor Beale, did you want to come back?
Very quickly, thank you. It's just reiterating what Councillor Marsh said. We're here as individuals, which is why in our discussions sort of previously to this, with regards to preparing an annual report of this committee, the emphasis was we don't put our political parties or what have you on it. We just are named if we are named in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to say anything, Nicola?
Thank you, Chair. I do have the figures for proportionality, if any member would like to see them. I appreciate all the comments that members have put forward today. The reason why we bring forward that advice on political balance is because of the regulations, because of the legislation. But it is the panel's decision to determine whether it feels that it meets all of those objectives. So if you feel that the current composition meets all the objectives, you're well within your right to decide not to change the composition of the panel.
Thank you. Councillor Dilks, you wanted to come back?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for comments. I do appreciate them all, you know, particularly Nicola's, you know. I appreciate we all get on and we make good decisions between us. And yes, we are not, you know, we try not to be political in this room. I accept all that. It has got close to politics in some previous meetings previously, but let's not go there. But it's a legal requirement. That's the bottom line. And we can't have a police committee that isn't legal. That is a nonsense. That's why as I say, And when I look, you know, you can look and say, oh, different independent groups can't be amalgamated for the calculation, so, you know, they won't count. You know, we don't sort of put them together. We look at them separately. Oh, you've only got 3, you've got 4, whatever. We can't add them up. You know, I've got to say, what do we do about, forgive me, Chris, but, you know, we've got a Labour group on some authorities, and we've got a Labour and Co-op group on some authorities. Are they separate groups? Presumably we add them up and we call them all Labour. That makes sense, of course. But we've also got, on another authority within the county, we've got some members of their administration are elected as Conservatives, and others are elected as a Conservative and Unionist party. And there are other variations on that. And if we look at, I'll name this one, West Lindsey. If we look at the administration group, you've got 13 of one party, you know, I'll say them, 13 Conservative, 11 Lib Dems, 3 Independents, and 2 Lincolnshire Independents. How do we work that out? How do we add, you know, all those? So I'm just saying, I just think we need that table that Nicola's alluded to, and we need to consider that table and really come together and say, what is the best way forward here? That's what I'm asking for, and I think it's dangerous just to say, oh, let's leave it, we'll get away with it, we'll be fine, or any of the other things. You know, we say one of the options is let's elect an extra member, a non-aligned councillor. Well, what does that mean? There are 13 non-aligned that I've counted across the county. There's actually a non-aligned group of councillors on one council. And I just think, you know, that would, non-aligned is I haven't counted them in my group of independents, but, you know, that wouldn't make sense either, I've got to say. And I think we'd come to regret that, and I think we'd regret any of the options that are there on the table. I really think we need to go away, have a bit better think about it, perhaps a meeting of whoever, and come up with it. I accept what you say, Chairman. It's not for us to sort of, you know, it's perhaps for the county council or the 8 groups, or the 8 councils. But it is our problem because we're stuck with it.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. Councillor Woodliff?
I'd just like to make one point, Chairman, is that we don't hold the police to account. We hold the Police and Crime Commissioner to account. So we're holding a politician to account who's happened to be a member of, well, he was a Conservative, now an Independent, isn't he? So, you know, we have to remember that we don't take out for, we're not holding operational matters to account. So therefore, not holding the police to account. We're a body holding a politician to account, aren't we? That's really the important thing. I don't think it matters whether we're politically balanced or not. After all, districts themselves, districts select the person they want their confidence in to represent them in this particular committee. You know, that's the way it is. I don't think it matters. I don't think the political balance comes into it. Unless, of course, government wants to legislate that district councils must, well, they won't do it now, will they? District councils must appoint somebody, you know, who fits the political makeup of this committee, but they can't do that because the legislation allows district councils to select whoever they want, and do, and correctly so. So I don't think we should worry about the political balance. We are all independents, really, I think, when we sit on this committee. I don't think we have to worry about it. The government's got enough problems as it is. It's not going to come running after us, is it? It can't. Just lost its defence minister or whatever, haven't they? So, I mean, they've got many more important things to worry about than... Pardon? Sorry?
Nicola, can I ask you a
Thank
question? Councillor Beale has proposed the status quo, and there are several other people in this room that have indicated that. Councillor Dilks has suggested that it's illegal. Are we, if... Sorry? Maybe. I don't know if you said maybe. Yeah, I made a note of that. I like attention to detail. So I was going to ask you, Nicola, as our advisor, if it is voted for the status quo, would we be breaking the law?
Thank you, Chair. Because, as I mentioned at the beginning, the panel arrangements and the legislation that underpins this panel doesn't specify how proportionality should be calculated. We infer that we utilise the proportionality legislation that relates to local authorities that nominate to this body. So therefore, both decisions that have been put forward are legal to do. So you can decide not to make a decision today, and you can review it. However, the proper officer has determined and is recommending to you the figures that are in the report as correct. That is for you to accept or not to accept.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Thank you for that, Nicola.
If I may, thank you for that. I'm awfully sorry. I did yes. What I'm saying is, I really don't think we should take a decision today because we haven't got the evidence. Nobody in this room knows now how many of one political party or another we have across the 8 authorities that make up this. And that's what we were given last year at this committee. We were given that, and I've seen it across, and so we don't know how many independents there are, or I've done my own figures, and I can see that, but we're not being given the evidence today. So I think it is remiss of us to take that decision today. So I am asking, I appreciate you've got a recommendation, a proposal, but I would favour delaying this, deferring this decision until the next meeting when we can have a little bit more information.
Thank you, Councillor Dilts. Councillor Burke?
Yeah, I would submit, my lord, that we have the information on page 106, 2.3, and we have the information on 2.7. So we've been told, thanks to the assiduous performance of our officers, the political balance based on a panel of 10, and we have the political balance based on a panel of 11, with political parties included. I mean, you could, and I respect Phil's respect for the law, because a headline that says police and crime panel illegal doesn't look very good, but we've received the advice we asked for. The legislation is silent on the issue that Phil is talking about. So we've inferred, based on the actions of district councils, how we proceed. So I would submit that we are legal, because the legislation is silent. It's up to this committee. I don't know what other information our officers could bring to us that we don't already know.
Yeah, you're very kind, thank you. Yeah, I hear what you say, Chris, but in that table, it suggests, the political balance based on a panel of 10. Now, that isn't what we've got now, because they're listed as having one allocation, the progressive group. Now, who are the progressive group? They are 15 members of the Boston independents, I've got to say. And, if we went down that road, Mr. Woodruff would have to stand down. Oh, sorry, you're not a member of are you? Of the Progressive Independents? No, you're an independent, yeah. You're literally an independent. But the Boston is made up of 15 they're all independents, but 15 progressive independents, 6 2020 independent group, which includes Councillor Woodruff as an independent, but not as a 2020 member as such, and 2 2020 members. They're all of which are independents. So I've got to say, if we went with that table, you would be expecting to go against what Councillor Woodruff has quite rightly said, that Boston sends who they want to send, quite rightly. But that would list that we want a progressive group, and we wouldn't have one. So we'd be back to square one.
Well, going back to my original comments, Councillor Dilks, we as a panel, we receive the elected members from the individual councils. The individual councils at their AGMs, and including this county council, identify their representative who will represent them on this panel. And, well, whether we didn't used to do it, well, I can't answer why you've changed. I've been on this panel since day one, and we've always had this makeup. We've had 7 district councillors, we've had 3 county councillors, and in the first days we had 2 co-opted independent members, and we've recruited Dr. Haggerty in recent times, so we have extended that. But that has always been the model since day one of this panel.
Mr. Chairman, the model was, as I say, when I came on a number of years ago, coming back to the county council, Democratic Services informed me there may be a space for an independent member or an independent member, but we'll have to wait until we see what all the districts send us, and we will then do the calculation. So when we consider that the county send more than one member, i.e. 3, that would be, to me, a sensible way of doing it, for the county to say, yeah, we'll wait till all the districts come in, see what we've got, and then we'll make sure that the county then sends the required political balance.
But that's what we've got now. We've got 7 district councillors, and the county decided at their AGM that you, Councillor Matthews and Councillor Bamford, a new member, would be the county councillors. Yeah, so it's happened. Okay, I'm going to draw a line under it. There's been a proposal for the status quo. Councillor Dilks, have you got a proposal?
Well, as I said, my proposal, if you're inviting one, would be to defer this until the next meeting, until we have further required information, the proper information. And that table at 2.3 does not give us that information. Nobody in this room knows what the numbers are. And so I'm asking for us to have the evidence before we make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. Mr. Williams?
Before you take a vote on this, can I just check, is there a quorum requirement in terms of a qualifying vote, or is it simple majority?
Majority. Councillor Trotter?
Yeah, I mean, I've kept quiet because I'm very fortunate and I'm pleased that I've maintained my position as a Conservative on the Police and Crime panel, gifted to me basically by the Independent. Although I fully appreciate what everyone's saying, why change it if it's not broken? But I feel that I would have to abstain on this one.
Okay. So there is a...
Finally, if I may one time, and thank you for that, Sarah. I have to say, it was suggested to me a year ago when this first became a big problem, that, if the district council, if you were sent by the district council and, the independent district council sent myself as its member, rather than a Conservative, which is absolute nonsense. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because, Sarah brings a lot to the meeting. And so I'm just out for fairness, Mr. Chairman, and legislation. We're all saying, no, we don't want it to be political. Sadly, it is. And there is a legal requirement. I accept what Nick is saying, but I do think we're not, we should at least defer it and come back with all the information. You may then make the same decision, but then at least it's been properly considered.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dilks. So, Councillor Beale, you are proposing the status quo. Do I have a seconder? Yeah. Councillor Woodliff. All in favour? Have you got that? 4. Councillor Dilks proposes that we defer it today and look at the numbers and come back to the next meeting for a decision. Do I have a proposer? Second. He's proposed. Apologies, Councillor Dilks. Do I have a seconder? No. So the status quo will remain. Okay. Right, well, thank you for that debate. Oh, I would think everybody's vote, and Councillor Trotter discussed, said she was going to abstain, so that will be recorded. Everything will be recorded, yeah. Abstain, yeah. Okay. Right, moving on very quickly, because I'm very much aware of your precious time, and it's 20 to 2. So, our annual report, Mr. Williams, thank you.
Yep, not a great deal to say about it. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look through it. It's been structured along the lines of last year's report, cover the same areas under the same headings, with my best endeavours to update it to reflect the activities of the panel over the last year. Hopefully it is a reasonably all-encompassing reflection of what we've done, what we've achieved and what we've delivered. I guess the only supplementary question I've got is to what extent anybody takes an interest in this outside of this panel. But there you go. Any comments, suggestions, amendments, very welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Williams, and on behalf of the panel, can I thank you for all the hard work that you've put into that. I know that these annual reports do take a lot of work, and lots of hours are put into preparing such professional documents. So thank you very much indeed, and we should record that as well on behalf of the panel. Any comments from members?
Just to support that comment of yours.
Yeah, and so if we approve it today, it can be published. So do I have a proposer? Councillor Beale, seconder Councillor Marsh, all in favour? So we'll publish our annual report. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Moving on to the National Association of Police, Fire and Crime Panels. Councillor Burke, if you want to report, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. The last meeting was the 1st of April, and the committee discussed the frontline Eastern Region meeting outcomes, and there was a meeting with the Home Office. The Home Office sent 2 people to actually brief us. And you've actually had all this information back in April, but you've probably forgotten about it. But if you go back to your emails at some stage and put something like the 1st of April in, or NAPFCP, this will all come up in slides. So what happened was 2 people from the Home Office came along, quite senior people, and they then told us what was going to take place. James Bennett-Clark, Police Governance Reform Policy Lead. Ben Cullymore, Senior Policy Advisor, Police Governance Reform. And a lot of this you'll already know, but they told us that what was anticipated was the PCC model would be abolished, policing governance transferred to mayoral strategic authorities, foundational strategic authorities or policing and crime boards. The policing and crime boards interested me because the committee that we now sit on would be reduced to local authority leaders and or strategic authority mayors across the force area and 2 independent members. So that's a change of nuance, I would suggest, Chair. The boards would appoint a policing and crime lead to exercise most of the police government's functions on a day-to-day basis, with the exception of existing functions currently reserved to PCCs. And they say this role is akin to that of a deputy mayor for policing and crime. The model will be scalable to cover larger forces with arrangements established for accountability, including new local policing areas, which we've referred to in the past and considered. And this is England and Wales, of course. Primary legislation will be needed, possibly in the second session, subject to parliamentary time. And there will be an independent review, and I think we've discussed this too, into force structures with recommendations submitted to the Home Secretary, they said optimistically by summer 2026. So I'm happy to take questions on that section alone because that's quite significant.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Any questions for him? Clearly there's a significant pieces of work ongoing regarding reorganisation. Thank you.
So going back then to the event, so that was a big item that we discussed. The other item that came up was the issue of legally qualified advisors with the APCC. So apparently there's big problems with this. So I've been asked, and all the members have been asked, to feed back any information regarding legally qualified advisors in their own panel area. So to put some detail on that, the legally qualified chairs, following concerns regarding a shortage of legally qualified advisors, the chair of this committee had requested a meeting with the APCC. The process relating to legally qualified advisors were reviewed. The APCC had confirmed they were examining the issue of the absence of liability protection for legally qualified advisors. That's why there's a shortage, because these people don't feel that they have liability protection. It was noted that the average duration of a complaint exceeded 400 days. It was further reported there was growing concern that individuals were reluctant to join the list due to the unresolved liability issue. The chair would be raising these concerns with the APCC, as well raising it with the executive committee, including the possibility of writing to the government. He encouraged members to seek information, which is, I am doing that with you now. I suspect you've got no information for me on this. The next meeting is on the 17th, next Wednesday. So that'll come up again, and he'll report back to us at that point. Finally, the elections were discussed. It was noted elections should not have an impact on this particular body. So I think they were referring then that would be the local government elections.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Any other questions for Councillor Burke on this item? No, and thank you for your involvement with the National Association. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Moving on to item 16, the work programme. I think we got the complaint subgroup are going to be reformed, and we'll take that forward after this meeting. Is there anything else on the work programme? No, nothing else. No changes. So if I can ask you, Councillor Marsh, to lead on the complaint subgroup again, please. Thank you very much. So, final item, 17, date of next meeting, which is Friday the 24th of July, and that will be for a confirmation hearing for the PCC's Chief Executive. And you'll receive the papers in good time for that meeting. So can I thank you all for your attendance this morning and your input and your challenging of the PCC on his work. So I will now formally close the meeting. Thank you.